Yeah.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and apologies for the late start. We've been having some technical issues with internet coming in and out, and so I'm hopeful that our guest will be able to come on and we are able to have no real major internet issues. I am hopeful that we will have our episode, as I am looking forward to talking with our guest. She is an amazing person, and unfortunately, it's just one of those situations where the internet does not seem to be our friend right now, and so she was on and it's been cutting in and out, and so hopefully she'll be back on shortly and we will do the best we can with tonight's show. And if we have to, we'll reschedule and hopefully find a time when the internet's more stable. We have both tried rebooting our computers, and the Wi-Fi just seems to be cutting in and out. She is in another state, and so it could be a matter of whose end, but I am going to take a moment and I am going to look up her bio so that I can share with you all a little bit about why I'm excited to have this guest on and have her share her experience with us. And I'm just kind of waiting right now for my computer. It's been a little bit slow, but hopefully I can get it to get a little bit more cooperative. So, Jane Celia Hatch is a survivor of the secret space program, MKUltra, and here she is. So, I will add her to the stage. Okay. I was just letting people. Oh, go ahead. Hopefully, is this going to work as it seems? we've gotten frozen, and so I apologize. And as soon as she unfreezes, hopefully she can share some of her story and experiences. And as she's dropped out, I will share a little bit more. She deals with family court and is a whistleblower journalist, a targeted individual. She's a shamanic healer, remote viewer, and a Reiki Master. And her newest book is Royal Blood, Royal Blackmail, focusing on exposing MKUltra as a systematic since Operation, or systemic, sorry, not systematic, systemic since Operation Paperclip. In most all institutions in the West, she does healing sessions focusing on helping people recalling their SSP memories and also integrating lost soul parts into their core essence. She returns power to victims and releases them from negative entities. And she also is the host of a podcast show. So this is why I'm hopeful we can have her share some of her experiences and her story. And we will see where we go from here, if we can get the internet to cooperate.
Having problems tonight with the internet.
Okay, we have you now. I've introduced you.
Second.
Let's see. It seems like they may not want us to talk about this tonight, and we actually were going to do a positive and focus on positivity with her work. And so I'm not sure why the internet is not wanting to work. And so oh, we can hear you now.
I can see you and hear you. So that's a good sign.
Well, I mentioned your bio since we were waiting for the internet, and I said we were going to take a positive spin, and all of a sudden it came up and started working. So whoever didn't want us to talk about something must have heard it's going to be positive and was like, oh, okay, let's let it go then.
It's working. We better start rolling while we have the internet.
So I'm curious, did you become a shamanic healer and a remote viewer after you had your memories of the SSP, or did it come before that?
The shamanic healing part came before the SSP memories started to come back, because I have just started to get my SSP memories back in the last 2 years, where I've been practicing shamanism for like 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first element of healing that I came across after family court and MKUltra and the traumas that I experienced. I started to heal with shamanism. And that was on many levels. Like I sometimes think you're born, if you're born a shaman and you've had it in past lives. And so I just sort of felt like I picked up where I left off, but then I had a lot of training too by a lot of different teachers on the East Coast and New Mexico and Colorado. And it really is what enabled me to survive with shamanism. And the SSP memories have just started to come back as I've, begun to heal from all the original traumas, which is the whole point. They want to keep you buried so that, you can't find those memories. So I'm getting to them late, but I'm getting to them.
Well, you have a jump on me because I've only been getting mine recently, and they seem to be triggered, and somebody can say something, and then I have full memory, and then as soon as we're done, the memory disappears, and it's like, I talked about what, and it's kind of funny because it's like I sound like I know exactly what I'm talking about, but if you ask me a question about it after, I'm like, I have no idea.
You're probably
And
channeling an altar.
I think that's what it is I did a session where one of my altars said, I am helping you to remember when you need to remember, and then we take the memory away so to not overload the mind. And I was like, well, that sounds nice, but then I was like, wait, who's deciding what's overloading my mind?
That's a good question. Who's in control? Yeah, I
Yeah.
probably just the last year, but I do remember them. After I make the contact with the memory, it sticks with me, and they've stayed with me along with all the other trauma memories. But I had no idea for most of my life. I mean, I knew something was seriously wrong. As most survivors do, you suffer with PTSD and addictions and a sense of not being in your body and all sorts of strange memories. But I didn't really know what was going on. I thought it was, just something to do with my family or abuse, sexual abuse or abandonment. But they do that on purpose. They pile everything up so that you don't really ever get to the origin, although everybody is, all of us are getting to it. So I imagine that's coming as kind of a surprise to our handlers.
I think so. And I find it interesting how, with all that you went through and I went through, and others, we have turned and become like healers. Like, I know a lot of SSP friends who are into sound healing, shamanic healing, as you're doing. I know Reiki,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't help wondering, is there, is that, did we do that by choice, or did we all kind of be guided into that path?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons we're actually chosen for the program is because we have healing qualities. We're telepathic, we're psychic, we have, healing energy streaming through us. And that's one of those are the qualities they look for in SSP. So we're actually chosen, I think, in many instances because we have those qualities and they can read it in our DNA, when we're born. And also, I think they used those school photographs, to pick, like we're seeing on the Epstein files, that they will pick the children they want. And they actually have their own psychics. I heard that they could pick the children that were telekinesic and telepathic. And so it's no surprise that we have all these commonalities between us.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm curious, as you do shamanic healing, I know a lot of time you go into visualization and you're looking at events. Have you ever come across events and you're like, wait a minute, where is this coming from? What is this event? And be like, this is not from my childhood. This is not my story. And in other words, having like SSP memories bleed into shamanic visualization.
Well, that's a tricky question. the shamanic healing technique I was trained in is core shaman. And it's really specific about where you go, how you get there, and who you bring with you. And so in those three dimensions, which is lower world, middle world, and upper world, you're going with your power animals and your spirit guides, and you're going with an intention. So you go with a very specific intention, going into the world to retrieve a power for my client, me.
Okay, we seem to have frozen. I was kind of hoping by sticking with the positive that we could keep this from happening. We'll see if she'll pop back in like last time. Let's see. It is interesting how a lot of people are quote unquote traumatized and still go into the healing factor and do the healing work on themselves, and that aspect is not able to be blocked. And so that's, a true testament to the human spirit and ingenuity, is that we can take and go through these horrible experiments, be broken, but still our core mission of healing that we were born to do can't be broken, that we still follow and go into that path. So I'll be interested to hear more of her thoughts about that, and hopefully we'll get into being able to integrate lost soul parts, because that is something I think is very important, and I have undergone twice and does have a big impact on the person or individual. And so I'm hoping we can get into that tonight. So I'm going to grab some water real quick. And hopefully we'll be able to get into what her podcast is about and what processes she does to help people recall memories, because everybody's different and you really should undergo recalling memories, especially secret space program memories, when you're truly ready and not because someone tells you you should. Let's see. She's back.
Yep, I'm back. I guess we better stay positive, huh?
Well, I'm curious, and I would like to get to this because I think it's really important about what you do, and that is integrating lost soul parts. Is that from your shamanic healing training, or did you pick that up with Reiki?
The soul retrieval was a training I got through shamanism. And I've started to also investigating reclaiming souls lost through SSP, which is kind of a whole different ballgame than the shamanic healing I've been taught. But I was taught, it's a very ancient technique, on shamanism is estimated to be about 100,000 years old, at least on this planet. And it was reintroduced all over the planet. It was like our basic religion 100,000 years ago. And finding the soul and bringing it back after trauma is one of the most integral parts of shamanism. And so what I was originally taught in the first 30 years, it is when there's any sort of trauma that's too overwhelming for the psyche, there's a survival adaptation where we send a part of ourselves away. And it generally will go back either to the site of the trauma, say you were in a car accident and you just couldn't handle it, so part of you left, or a rape, it's either at the scene of the trauma, or the soul will go to a place it's familiar to where it feels comfort and happiness and security. So I would journey. What you do is go into a shamanic, what's called a shamanic state of consciousness. And that doesn't have to be done with any kind of, herbs or any mind altering. In fact, 90% of shamans around the world use like drumming, sticks, even dancing. There's the reindeer shamans that's the name of the tribe. It's not reindeers. They dance. I use a drum to go into that altered state of consciousness. And then I set my intention that I'm going into the either upper world, lower world, and middle world in search of, let's say, your soul part, because we've determined there's soul loss, because we've determined there's been a trauma, and after that trauma you had maybe increase in addictions, a feeling of not being present in your body, feeling purposeless. There's like a list of about 10 things you'll feel after you've had a soul loss. And so what the shaman does is call in all your allies, your power animals, your spirit guides, and you start to journey through the web of life. And with your attention is, I'm going to find Michael's soul that was left his body at a certain time, and we're going to go retrieve that soul part. And often part of that, the shaman is like a Brooke Medicine Eagle calls us the hollow bone. You're just using the energy of your spirit guides, really, and they're the ones, they'll bring you to that soul. And they can be in lower world or middle world or upper world in traditional shamanism. Now that I'm opening up to SSP, they can be almost anywhere in the galaxy. But my training was just these 3 different dimensions on Earth. So then you go and you find that soul, and you recognize it, because you recognize the DNA when you're getting close, and your power animals will give you. My power animal right now is buffalo. I've had different ones my whole life. Everybody has, they change with your age and what you need, and so we'll approach the soul part and begin potentially a negotiation. Are you, Michael would like you to come back. He needs you. He needs his 10-year-old self. And the soul part will usually says something like, it's not safe, or and then I say, it's safe now. It's okay to go back. And so we negotiate a little bit. And then if they agree, then generally I'll hold out a crystal, and they'll, I'll ask. Oh, we're back. Okay. So.
Okay. Or I think we're back. Man, I want to hear what happens with the crystal.
You hold out. So I have a real crystal in my real hand, and I have a spirit crystal in my spirit body. And then I asked the soul, are you willing to go back to Michael? He's safe, it's safe now. There's no more trauma, and do you need any healing before you go back? So, because we don't want to return a soul part that's not going to be in your best and highest interest. So there's a little bit of discussion and negotiations. And sometimes you have to deal with an entity that's captured the soul or holding the soul, like a demonic presence or relative or an ex-boyfriend or an ex-wife. Like lots of times people are holding the soul because the soul has a lot of light. So you have to negotiate with the person holding that soul or the demonic presence. And sometimes you can make a trade with them. You'll say, well, I'll give you this crystal ball, or I'll give you this, or I'll give you that. And it's like all this negotiation on the spirit level. And so eventually you hopefully will get the soul released. And then they go into the crystal, and then you turn and you follow the web of life back to the client. And then you hold the crystal over their heart, and you blow the soul part back in through the heart, and then through the top chakra, and then you drum, sealing it in. That's a traditional soul retrieval through core shamanism. SSP takes it to a whole new level. And I'm just starting to investigate that and do that for myself before I start to do it for anybody else. I mean, I can do soul retrievals, traditional soul retrievals. And I've also had like a cyber, I was, part of my cloning, I was put into a cyber soldier, and there was an accident and I could feel it calling out to me. I didn't even know. And my soul went to it, and I grabbed a piece of my soul that had been taken in cloning and retrieved that. So that's the whole new aspect that is opening up that I'm really, really interested in, is reclaiming our cloned parts and our fragments taken during SSP and put into I mean, you really can't take an altar out of a clone, or that clone ceases to exist and they have a life. So those aren't the kind of soul parts that you can go after and just take. I could take that altar because it was in the death process, and I got it before they recycled it. So am I still answering the question?
You are, and I actually have a new question I hadn't thought about, and that is, if you come across a soul part that, as you're saying, not beneficial to you, do you just walk away and just leave it, or do you negotiate and try to make it beneficial and retrieve it then?
Every situation is unique, and you're listening to your spirit guides and power animals, and they're giving you telepathic messages. Generally speaking, they always want to come back. Our parts always want to come back to us. I may have had a few where I put them in a place that was safe, and maybe brought them back a power animal, so that power animal could begin to heal them before I returned them. In which case I've gone back to the client and said, I did find your soul part, but they need more healing before it's in the best and highest interest of them to come back to you. Most souls, whether they're, I do a lot of, or I did, of helping discarnate ghosts go back to heaven and leave this planet. And they're most always willing to go. They don't even know they're dead. But I mean, that's a whole different, that's psychopumping. That's different than soul retrieval. But, souls generally are gravitating towards the light if, they're your soul part, or reunion with the soul essence.
That's amazing. And I had to admit, I'm familiar with power animals and animal totems, and integrating them to where like you can see better with like an eagle's eyesight, or hear better like with a wolf where you can hear greater distance. But I've never heard or thought about using the power animals to heal an aspect of myself before integration. An amazing sound and theory, and it makes sense though too why some of us, have more animal totem, so to speak, connection than others, is what we're using it for. And that's like a tapped resource never thought about.
It's a huge resource that is so underused and underapplied because generally speaking, it's going to be pounded out of you. Little kids say, "Oh, I have my tiger is following me today, mom, or my wolf, or my monkey, or my elephant," and they'll go, "Oh, that's just a fantasy. That's not real. That's not real." Because you're born with all these power animals. I actually think that's the origin of the stuffed animals, like that whole concept of all these animals around us. And then as you grow and they change, and they're there to protect, heal, guide, uplift. But if you ignore them long enough, they do kind of wander away, if you get involved in addictions or abuse, because it's a free will planet, and they're not the type of entities that are there to change your free will. They're there to be there. So that's why, like, shamans will also have altars where they might have like a lion or a wolf, or and there's maybe smudging it. You're just forming a relationship with that collective entity. And what powers animals really are the collective consciousness of that entire species. Like, they have a hive mind. So when you say like wolf medicine, you've got the wolf medicine of the entire species. Or you've got, elephant medicine, or you've got hawk medicine. It means hawk is the entire knowledge of the hawk species is accessible to you. And it's just, underused. It's just like, it's been repressed throughout, history. Shamans have been killed off, whether it's, the ghost dance or the witches, or I said Siberian shamans were thrown out of helicopters, because we hold, there's so much knowledge in that, and especially about the soul and how we have to have the soul in our body to be fully, functioning and powerful and present. We need to have our soul, and shamans were very good at that. In ancient times, there'd be a shaman in every village. So you just wouldn't do the soul retrieval. You'd be there to make sure that person continued on their path, and they didn't keep, because what happens when you have one soul loss, you generally haven't, because you're not totally present, you get off path and you have another trauma, and then you have another. But when when there was a shaman watching over, they'd say, they would call you in and say, we just did this soul retrieval. It's just like, it was so integrated in villages and communities. But now it's very, of course, they're not going to want they don't want humans to have access to all this magical power, the tree spirits, flower spirits. Everything has a spirit that will work for you if you talk to it, if you connect. It's like Lord of the Rings in a way. We do have access to all these amazing beings that, it's Mother Earth really protecting us. It's all from Mother Earth, really, Gaia.
That makes sense. And I'm curious, with your work, when you deal with power animals, do you limit the animals to like the ones that are on the earth today? Or where I'm going with it is like, I was introduced to power animals of like dinosaurs, dragons, unicorns, what we call mythological,
Yeah.
that were once here. And so I never thought to tap into them, because I thought, oh, mythological, most likely didn't exist. But then somebody said, well, yeah, I tapped into this dinosaur. And I was like, wait, you tapped into something extinct? I was like, wait a minute, that opens up a whole new ball game here.
Yeah. Yeah, they can exist across timelines, eras. I don't think there's anything really truly mythological. There's nothing new under the sun. If you have a unicorn as a power animal, it really does exist, and it's just coming to you from another vibration. So they're not all traditional. I named off like Native American, our traditional, but in every culture, the power animals were different and based upon sometimes religious beliefs and also where you live. Like if you live in Africa, you're more likely to have those type, because you're in their vibrational frequency more so. I mean, it can be anything from a bird to an ant to a they will change based upon what you need in your life, or sometimes what you call upon for strength. If I'm doing a healing and somebody has maybe they have a possession, they're possessed, I kind of know, if Jaguar shows up, we're going to be doing a depossession. If Hawk shows up, we're going to be doing some kind of there's a spiritual intrusion, and we're going to be taking that out because Hawk goes down with the claws. So I kind of know at the beginning of a shamanic journey who shows up, what they already know what they're going to do. I mean, other than my standard power animals that are there for me, to protect me. It's like, what kind of surgery is going to go on by who shows up.
So here's a kind of curious question for you, tying into like the paranormal unexplained phenomenon. Is I'm sure you've heard of cryptids, which are like hybrid creatures. Can those become power animals?
What did you say? Cryptids?
Cryptids, like Dogman or Bigfoot or
No.
Mothman.
No. I've had experience with dogmen. They're really, really, really dangerous. It's a long story, but no, they would never be. If you don't feel like love, compassion, joy, those are dangerous entities. There's some shamans that say they can transform those into from demonic to healer, but right off the top of my head, say no. There's no. They are not your allies, and you would hope to be.
Yeah, I was just curious because hybrid animals, could they be power animals, or because they were manipulated, that takes away their power, maybe?
Well, there could be power animals for Satan. They're the hybrid creatures. Some of them I don't think have a consciousness, and some of them are just bred. Like the dogmen have the worst energy I think I've ever felt in my life, and they're I don't know if they're controlled by AI or remote control, but they don't come near being a power animal. There's some sad, pathetic, horrible creature created by our military for whatever for a variety of purposes. Some of their hybrid are successful, so-called, and some of them I guess are just blobs sitting there with one eye. It's sad state of affairs.
So what techniques do you use to introduce people who may not be familiar with their power animals?
Well, I do. First, we kind of identify if they felt a power loss, like if you're accident prone, or you just you go out and you seem to have, which is kind of weird because all targeted individuals have they're gang stalked and whatnot, but you kind of determine if they've had a power animal loss, and they'll sort of come in with that concept that they know that they want their power animal because they're already kind of familiar with shamanism. And then what I do is I call in my power animals, and we journey to lower world, which is the location of the power animals. And we journey. It's lower world is a downward like spiraling, like upper world, you go up towards the clouds and the heavens, and Black Elk talked about it, and so do shamans historically. And then there's lower world where you sort of descend, you go through a route, or you imagine a staircase or stairs, and you go down and down, and then the most important thing is you set the intention. I'm going to lower world to find a power animal for Michael for his highest and best interest. And then so I do the travel beat is like a really fast beat. I don't know where my drum is. And then when I'm in lower world, it goes to a slower beat, like a journey. And I'm in the process of looking for your power animal. And traditionally, it will show itself 4 times from 4 different directions, if you know it's their power animal. And then you also, you're getting telepathic messages from, I'm getting them from mine, like they'll not, they'll do something or they'll stop. And then you do the same thing with the crystal, like you do with the soul, and then you bring it back and blow it back into the person. And then I drum around to kind of seal the power in.
So can the power animals help us to reclaim our self-power and empower us and help us to, stand in our power, so to speak?
Yeah. Say you wanted, to have more vision of the future and be more wise about and be able to see into the future. You might call upon like eagle vision. You could call upon eagle to be in your energy field. And we sort of share the energy, like the eagle's sharing our energy and we're sharing their energy. It's like a cooperative. They get to kind of be incarnate a little bit. And so you're kind of taking on their medicine while they get to kind of be part of the earth, this dimension. And so they each have a different strength. And yes, they can help you in, like I said, each one, like if you want, like bear is about like family and strength and maternal love. And like I have like bear is one of my primary, and buffalo right now. So each power animal, and some shamans have hundreds, if not thousands, because they do so much different types of work. And, people just, everybody can, partake in it. It's a gift from Mother Earth for every human being on the planet. And a very small percentage are taking advantage of it. So yeah, it will empower you in whatever you're looking for at this time in your life. Whether it's sometimes even the ant medicine is like organization, and sometimes they will, like, if you start seeing like a certain animal, like it fall, it's in a book and it falls off a shelf or an advertisement, or, if, you live around, you start seeing them, they're also giving you a message. And it's not like every single coyote you see in the world like that means you have coyote medicine. It's like you feel it in your gut. It's like you're looking into another dimension when they have a message. You'll just feel a little different. Your attention will be drawn to it. Like, at certain times in my life, I saw a raven over and over and over. And he was trying desperately to give me a warning. And I didn't get it. I was too mind controlled. That's the problem I had as a young shaman. I was into MKUltra mind control, and I didn't even know it. So I'm being pulled like by all this love and light and truth, and then I've got MKUltra mind control pulling me in another direction. And so that was very difficult.
And that brings up another interesting point is, as we're working with our, soul parts and reconnecting ourselves and working with the power animals, what comes of people who find out that they may be hybrid, where they're human mixed with a star being, for example, like say Lyran? does that power animal, is it able to work with both sides, or can it only work with the one side because the star side is unknown or unfamiliar?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I've never been asked that question. Well, they've been working with me, and I have like a some Pleiadian DNA, and I think they have a lot of wisdom, and I'm sure going in, and I've gone to other planets with my power animals. So I think they naturally, and I'm not even sure they make a distinction, but I think they naturally understand who you are and your strengths and wisdoms. Maybe don't label it. I don't know. Like the whole SSP and shamanism is something like I'm really just getting into, and I just find it absolutely like fascinating, like how, because I don't know any other shamans that are like integrating like galactic shamanisms with ancient earth history shamans. It's just none of my teachers talked about this, and I did a master's degree in shamanism. That wasn't what at Lesley College in Cambridge. I mean, that's not what taught me to be a shaman, but I learned a lot. I had, I interviewed I did a literary review. So I had like a global world view on it, but no one, maybe, the Australian shamans, and African, they often talk about, that their home is the stars. So maybe they know more about the galactic aspect, but I would say, power animals just support you for who you are. I'm not sure they're making a distinction of what starseed you are.
And one thing that I'm curious about too with shamanism is I know it's connected with energies, and a lot of people will talk about like the natural lunar energy. Well, even the Zulus have stories of the moon was put into place. It was not a natural object. And so I wonder, does that impact, if you're trying to draw in like moon energy? Because I know like the eclipse has certain power to it, and phases of the moon have certain meanings. Because it's not a natural object, does that impact the shamanic and power animals, or do they just look at it as an object and say, you know what, it's got energy, we'll use it, this is it?
I should take a power animal and journey to the moon with it and ask. I don't know the answer to that question. It's a very good question. Um, it's something that I'd like to go there, through the field, the energy field, and go there. And again, shamanic journey is different than remote view. I could also do a remote view, but with the shamanic journey, I'm sending a soul fragment there. With remote viewing, I'm sort of in a bubble looking out at the world. But it would be interesting to go. I don't know the answer to that. Like I know I've questioned that myself, because especially there's so many religious or spiritual people that cinnamon that work with the moon, and I wonder that now, because so many survivors are saying it's just been placed there. It's not a natural being. But even if it's not natural, everything has an energy imprint that can be utilized one way or another. If it's made from a metal, I mean, everything has a spirit.
Right. The story that I was told about the moon that to me kind of makes the most sense is when Atlantis was destroyed and Lemuria was destroyed. It caused the waters to become uneven and the earth to become a little bit unstable. And so the galactics moved the object that we call our moon in, and to kind of settle the landscape, to settle the tides, and to offset the missing land. And it kind of makes sense because a lot of the timelines are Atlantis disappears, the moon appears. it's like they were so close together that it's like you can't help but think, oh, so if it wasn't for the moon, we would be in a much different world. And who else but an intergalactic or a galactic being would have the foresight to say, let's take this object and put it here, and that'll do everything we need it to do. And we have a base of operations. We can keep an eye on these people.
It does sound like a military operation, doesn't it? The moon.
Well, and talking about the moon, there is one thing that I find so fascinating is we have how many satellites around the Earth to communicate globally, but we have no satellites to talk to our astronauts when they're going to the moon. That
Right.
does not make any sense to me why there are no options for them to communicate. And they're just like, oh, we just lose communication with them for a certain amount of time while they're on the dark side. I'm like, and we're okay with that.
Well, I'm hoping that humanity is waking up and finding out everything they've told us is a lie. Remember the moon landing where did the president like call them on the phone or something? And they had, and you look at it now, the thing, they look like they made it out of tinfoil. It's just like, but I can remember back then we were like, oh my God, that's amazing. And now you look at it now and it looks like something, your kid made at kindergarten, like I guess our consciousness is growing and expanding and we can't accept that anymore. But didn't the president like call on the moon landing and say, we're, whatever, we're so proud of you. You may, I don't know if you remember, I barely remember it, but I think they like actually picked up one of the old landlines and called of course there was no astronauts on the moon or anything, but it was all a game. I don't even know what they were trying to like, mind control us about that we were advancing. I don't know why they did that.
It had something to do with the space race between
Yeah.
Russia and the U.S. So I think they were competing, and some of me feels like it's showing off who has more connections with the other beings and getting more resources, and to sit there and say, hey, look, we landed people on the moon in 10 years, and the best you could do is float a man around one orbit.
Yeah, but don't you think even the Russians, like everybody knew it was a farce and the real story was behind the scenes? Like everybody, the elite all knew it was a farce,
Right.
and the real story was going on in the secret space program where, moon was already inhabited and Antarctica was and all these planets were, they all knew. That was like a little show for us, the little kindergarten kids, little earthlings. But the elite all knew the real story about SSP. And
I think it was a means for them to write contracts to have more military presence build up.
Yeah.
And make more money and cause more conflict on the planet to go, oh, look, they're over here now. We need to go over here. And
yeah,
what's
exactly.
interesting is when we think about space, everybody is like, yeah, Russia's up there, the US is up there. But people don't realize like India is up there, China's up there, Japan's up there. There are other countries too. France, I think, even has a space
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
But everybody's like, no, India, I doubt it. They don't seem like, but yeah, they do. And so it always makes me wonder why it's always the US and Russia to be the quote unquote space, you know, controversies, and never, you never hear the US go, oh man, France is going to beat us up to do this. We
Well,
better step up our game.
Russia. They want us to hate. They want us to have a little enemy, so that they want us to hate certain groups, and so they create enemies for us, and they want us to hate Russia. So Russia's the ones, that are going to beat us at this, that, or the other thing.
And
they don't talk about the Germans either up there, of course. They don't talk about the Germans. And they're like, I think, aren't they dominant other than the Dracos?
Oh, they've been up there since the 40s, I think. So, and, one thing that people have been talking about is, and I'm curious your thoughts of, because being SSP, we can go off planet, like you were saying, is they say, oh, the astronauts never were on the moon because they would never survive the radiation leaving the planet's surface and leaving the atmosphere. There's a radiation frequency that they would be obliterated in. So no, we've never been to the moon. And I'm like, we've been to the moon and we've been to other planets. So is that theory about an energy field around the atmosphere, do you think that's a psyop, or do you think there really is
I think it's a psyop. I think it's just a lie they're telling us about Mars so that we don't, start thinking about it and investigating, and so they can keep the whole Mars base, and the whole Nazi, winning the war and all of that secret. They want us to know as little as possible so they can continue to enslave us and, abduct us off planet to the moon. I mean, there's so much going on. I mean, I know I have SSP memories on the moon. I've interviewed John Whitberg many times, and many SSP, Penny Bradley, and they have bases up there. They were pilots up there. It's just they're treating us like we're children in kindergarten, our leaders, so that they can continue to exploit us. So in a nutshell, it's more complicated.
Right. And then they feel like when they go, oh, UFOs are real, they're like, that's enough disclosure. They don't need more. We've said it's real. They'll be happy now. And it's like, whoa. There's so much more that that's behind that statement than what you're telling us.
Well, it's like soft disclosure. They have to address these things, but they'll do it like in breadcrumbs. Okay, well, yeah, they're talking about UFOs, so they're in full, but they're not talking about it's like one little molecule of what's really going on. What did Trump say now? Like he's trying to divert from the Epstein files. He says we're going to release the UFO or this, that. I don't know. I've been, since the 1960s, I've been watching the government deal with, UFO sightings. There was a whole UFO craze in Massachusetts in the 1960s, and they keep covering it up.
Well, and what surprised me was I thought I was really affluent in like Roswell. I knew about Roswell, and I had theoretical thought of there being a second. And when I was there and I was talking to a person that lived in Roswell, he goes, well, you can't go to the site now because they closed it off. And I was like, oh, well, that's a bummer. I was looking forward to it. He goes, but you do know that's only one of three. And I go, wait, three? Whoa, back up. Hold the phone. What are you talking about? There was three. I was thinking maybe two, but it was like, and it amazed me. And I go back and I would look at on my research, and everybody talks about the one.
Yeah.
And somehow 2 and 3 were completely erased from history.
Well, I think most everything is erased or hidden. They're just giving us, yeah, it's one huge psyop. Thank you. Yes, it's one huge psyop. And we're just starting to get the truth out now. Everything is a lie. It's formulated to keep us in ignorance and disempowered.
Which is a great tie-in to my next question, and I'm loving the fact that the internet is holding for this conversation at this point. Is you do work with helping releasing negative entities. Um, I'm curious, when you're talking about negative entities, are you just talking low vibrational attachments, or are you referring to like Dracos and all the like nasty nasties out there, so to speak?
I'm generally talking about entities from anything from like a spiritual intrusion, which could be cancer, to a possession, which is like you say you're walking over a graveyard and you suddenly get cold and somebody's entered your body. That's a possession. Demons can attach to someone, especially people who have addictions. I have personally not removed a Draco like Draco. I've seen Dracos. They're my hand. I know they're handlers of mine. But I'm not sure I would actually, that's a whole new realm when you're getting into the reptilians and the Dracos. And yeah, it's a whole new realm. I don't know if my shamanic skills or anyone's shamanic skills could remove a Draco reptilian from your energy field. You could lessen their attachment. You could find out why they're attached, and you could keep bringing more and more power to them. But I'm talking, everything from a demonic possession to a spiritual intrusion, or somebody screams at you. That energy could be in your chest, making you, so I can remove that. And I see everything from like a dark cloud to like a spider or a massive. My guides show me things like metaphorically, so we know what to remove. And it's a wide range from just negative energy you might picked up, like if your spouse yells at you or somebody yells, that could go into your, and I can, or something more serious like a possession or demonic or.
What about the black goo?
I don't know much. Like, I don't have any experience with black goo. I've heard many testimonies at this point. Especially with Max Spear, and I think Penny Bradley talks about it. I don't recall any experience with black goo, or even, those are questions that I could actually ask my power animals. Like, if I saw black goo in the universe, how would I deal with it? How would I protect myself? Could I move it? Could I remove it? Those are like the new frontier that's sort of opening up for me, is all these new terms from SSP that I didn't know 5 years ago. I'm learning a lot from other people about black goo, but as far as I know, and I don't have any experience with it.
No, that's fair, and thank you for your honesty. And I'm curious, like with power animals, we think of, like, if we're going to say the Arctic Circle for a park, obviously you would be like, hey, penguin or polar bear, because that's who you associate with that cold region. I wonder though, do our power animals get affected by the elements? And by that I mean, like, say I have huge wolf power animal energy and I get drawn into water. Would I be okay with the wolf energy in the water, or would the wolf be like, hey, this is not my element? Let me get you, a dolphin or a fish where this is their element, and you'll do much better with them.
Well, I mean, if you became temporarily immersed in water, that's not going to affect your relationship with wolf. If you become someone that wants to, be in the water all the time, and you would yeah, they might pass you on to some like thing like a dolphin or, um, a shark or a mermaid or other, there's all kinds of water beings. I can't say it would totally take the power away, but they're not as powerful out of their element. And generally, like, let's say you had a dolphin power animal, it'd be very good for you to be on the beach and doing and thinking and feeling things that the dolphin would enjoy doing. And that's how they grow closer and closer to you. Like they say, if you have like a jaguar or something, it's good to like go out and run at night and you start, jaguar loves that. So they're going to move closer to you. So the more, like, that's like the shamans wear the animal mask and they dance. They're on, it looks, weird, but they're actually honoring the spirit of their power animal and drawing that power closer. They're like a, owl stuff. I mean, I'm not talking like it, the satanic stuff is completely different.
Right. No, I know what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, the wolf isn't going to go away because you go for a swim, but they might not be as effective in the water. And then if you needed more water power, like which would kind of be like emotion or fluidity or feminine, another power animal might come along. That's empowered by water. You can have a series of power animals,
Well, and here's an interesting question for you, and I don't know if you have thought about it, is we, have been talking about like animals, mythological animals, or, hybrid animals. What about fae and elemental types? Are they accessible, or would they be like, a lot of people who do energy work are like, don't mess with the elementals. Don't touch the elementals. Stay away from them.
well, there's good and bad elementals. They're not power animals. They're in middle world with us. They share the same planet. Whereas power animals are like another frequency that visit us. All like the brownies, the fays, the flower divas, the tree spirits, they all share this middle world frequency. And I've had some that were very helpful, fairies, that have helped me, but they can be, very mischievous. I mean, especially like in Ireland and England, there's just like these horror stories about the fae and the mounds and people disappearing. And again, you've got to be very respectful of these entities. And, in certain countries, they used to, before they built a house, they would ask, permission from the local fae. So it's like they do have power and they will retaliate against humans if you don't respect them. They will, like, if they take a liking to you, then they will work as one of your allies, if you need help, if you've helped them or you respect them, and you've developed a relationship with them. They're different from power animals, but they're right that some of them can be pretty dangerous, but not all.
Yeah, I asked because, like, with Reiki, I found out I could channel in electricity, water, fire, air, the elements. And I was like, when I talked to somebody in paganism about it, they were like, you shouldn't be able to access that energy. That's really strange that you can do that. And to me, it was like second nature. I just did it. And so I was wondering if like the shamanisms have that as well, where it's like you can access the elements and work with the elementals, or if it's something that's like, nope, we're not really, going to do that. Let's leave them alone, and let's not everybody start going out there and going, let's bring out the electric energy.
I don't know about electricity. I certainly know like the elements fire, water, air, and earth, and they have a spirit. And there's such a thing as weather shamans that work with the spirits of the wind, the clouds, the rain, and they will, when there was a huge fire, like was getting close to Los Alamos Labs. Was it 20 years ago? And I know all the local shamans got together with some of the natives to move to work with the wind to move it in another direction. So it does have, and it is an energy, it is an entity, and we can negotiate with them, the spirits of the clouds and the rain. And, I want to figure out how to do this with chemtrails. Like we have to figure, and they're not entities, but I want to ask like the cloud spirits and the rain spirits, like, how do we clear these skies? Like, what do we do? Because I think they would help us. And like, they're not stopping, Kennedy was supposed to stop the chemtrails, but they're everywhere. And they're one of the most destructive things on the planet right now. And I feel like it would be great for, like, they're doing ley lines, a lot of the healers now, like the survivors, they're doing ley lines, but I would really like to get together and figure out, talk to the elementals, like how do we heal the skies?
It's interesting you bring up the chemtrails, because when I see chemtrails, I hear myself call out a name that is a name I associate with the wind. And I'm like, hey, are you aware this particle stuff is coming into your element and it's not good for you and it's not good for us? So, what do you say about kicking up some of your, wind ability and move it away? And sometimes I'll feel like the wind picks up and I'll be like, thanks. And I'm like, hey, did I just blow it away? Or was it coincidence that the wind picked up? I don't know, but I find myself talking to the elements and being like, hey, and if I feel like, well, the wind's not picking up, I may go like, hey, fire, how you feeling? You want to spark up a little bit and feel like, the heat of the fire going up and melting the particles. And so I feel like that's like my little trial of trying to keep the chemtrails out, is utilizing the elements, because they're there and they'll help if we ask. And I wonder if people started asking if they really would just like destroy these chemtrails before they hit the ground for us.
I think there's a very good chance they would respond to us. And it's a matter of people remembering who they really are, the humans remembering that they're God, they are a ray of God, and that we have these powers. And Christ tried to teach us that too. I think that's one of the reasons he came here. As I do, so can you. And the elements are more than willing to work with us if we acknowledge them. And you're like you're doing, you're forming a relationship. You already have that sense of saying hello. And I think if humans all over started to do this with the chemtrails, we could clean them up in cooperation with the elements. There was just this huge blizzard on the Cape, that wiped out all the power, and then it started pouring, and I'm like, I want to do a remote view, or I want to, like, it, half the things don't. I asked my daughter how it felt, and she said ominous. And so that to me indicates weather warfare. And like, we have so much more power to counteract this. We have more power than they do.
Right.
And we just have to believe in it again, because they make us think we're, the slaves of the universe. But I think we could do it.
Yeah, and talking about ley lines, we talk about, the energies that go with the ley lines, but can we tap into that energy with our power animals? Or or do they naturally do it and we don't have to ask for them to tap into the ley lines?
Well, I've been asked to clear ley lines under homes and things, and often I ask my power animals to do it with me. So they've cleared ley lines, along with dowsing rods and but I don't think that's actually answering your question. I know they will clear ley lines for us. If you ask them, they will clear ley lines. That's one way to clear them.
And now I kind of wonder, we talk about we see the Nazca lines and they're these animals or humans, in astronaut suits, and we don't know what they are for, really, or what they stand for. And I kind of wonder if it's was a message led to us of, hey, power animals are here. We're all over. We're universal, because let's think about it. You have a monkey in a desert that has no monkeys. How do they know what a monkey looks like? They would have had to have seen one, or, the spiders, or, the dragonfly. They have all these ant critters that don't exist in that environment, but yet we're drawn to perfect detail. And now I start to wonder, those are power animals. Could it be a message from the power animals to say, we're here to help, and we're just looking at it and going, well, there's these nice lines out there, we don't know what they mean, and we're just looking at everything but the obvious.
Yeah. Lots of times, especially for an individual, a power animal start appearing, repeatedly, maybe even collectively. I think that's what you're referring to as like a collective message to humanity.
Right.
Yeah. They're trying. And, the more mind controlled we get, the further we get from their messages, because we receive it through our heart and our intuition. If you're undermined, in your head from all the propaganda and mind control, you're going to be less and less apt to listen to anything remotely like a power animal or an intuitive because really your power animal is your instinct. Women Who Run with the Wolves, Clarissa Estes wrote that, and that's our instinct. It's very earthbound. Our primal instinct is tied into power animals a lot.
Right, and even tribal, when you look at the Aztec, their warriors were animal totems.
Yeah.
If you really think about it, they had the jaguar warriors, the eagle warriors. That would be the animal totems.
Yep, they were calling in that power. They were calling in the power of those animals that they were representing.
And so, I can't help but think now, looking at the world, we have architecture in Crete that has dinosaurs carved into rock that's hundreds of thousands of years old. But humans didn't exist when dinos existed, but you look at it and you're like, that's a stegosaurus. That's a brontosaurus. There's no ands, ifs, or buts. And then you go to Egypt and they have hieroglyphs of submarines, airplanes, UFOs, stuff that they could not have ever seen. And I can't help but wonder, do power animals show themselves, and that's why these people were able to carve or paint their image, because they were shown that power animal and they tapped in
Mm-hmm.
and realized what that stood for and was like, oh, let's add them to this doorway. And that'll be like another layer of protection because that's what this animal stands for.
Yeah, well, they were really integral in, decades and centuries ago. That power animals were like integral to life and hunting, and the shaman would call upon the power animals for the hunt, and they would be told. So that's why there's so many animals like on petroglyphs, and they represented a medicine and a wisdom and a part of the culture. The oldest human remains of a shaman was in the Czech Republic, was a female shaman, and she was buried with fox bones and all these animal totems. And I think she was 60,000 years old. So, the culture goes back that far, the shamanic culture on the planet. But, how many times have we lived here? I mean, we've been here millions of years. Who knows which cycle that was in, but it's very integral to being human on the planet, but it's been wiped out for the most part purposefully. What if everybody before the vaccine was in touch with their power animals? I don't think they would have taken it. They
Right.
have to get rid of our power, our intuitive power in order to be able to control us. But the strange thing is, I know shamans that took the vaccine. I mean, that's the one that blows my mind.
Well,
Really blows my mind.
yeah. And I can't help wondering with animal totems and power animals and everything being left behind as messages. I was watching Skinwalker Ranch, and they were showing the glyph of the snake in a spiral. And this person came and said, oh, in our tribe, this means portal. And they're like, oh, we have, this energy above. Is that a portal? And in shamanism, if you get a coiled snake like image, do you guys view it as portal as well? Or is that something that TV was just kind of going, hey,
Yeah.
let's make this fit so this can fit this, and we'll make people more interested in going, ooh.
Yeah, I think it was dramatized, in my recollection. I mean, my understanding of the snake, it's transformation, leaving behind the old, and because the snake sheds its skin, it's often about transformation. And I've never heard of that. I think that might have been, a dramatization of snake medicine. In every culture, things represent different. So a snake in one culture, native would be different than maybe Siberia or, China or Hawaii with the hunas. And there's a little bit different interpretation in different cultures.
Right. And I was just curious, if it was something similar and it was like, hey, that's even cooler connection.
Yeah.
But
It could be some tradition. There might be some tradition where the snake means a portal, but I haven't heard of that. But it's possible in there's shamanic traditions in every single culture in our society at one point or another in history.
And what I'm curious, and I know we're getting close to an hour and a half. Real quick though, about shamanism, because I find it interesting. In Hawaii, Huna, as you mentioned, had to go underground to survive. Druid had to go underground to survive. Paganism went underground to survive. And it seems like shamanism really didn't have to go underground as much as the other cultures. Or do you think it did?
I think it did. I think all of those cultures have an aspect of shamanism, and I think it did have to go underground. From the Native Americans when they outlawed the ghost dance for the Lakota Sioux, that was a form of shamanism. in South America. I mean, there was bits, in South America, some of the curanderos survived, but it was very rare. And I think that it all went underground, starting at least 100 years ago. Political, military, religious forces all, punished, imprisoned. The natives were very, felt a toxic shame for decades about their connection to being medicine men and medicine women. So I think it all went underground, and, Druids were shamanic. Japan, Korea, Africa, Australia, look what they did to the Aboriginal. Any people that has shamanic knowledge, especially, they will go, like the natives. And in the Celts, the Irish, the witches, anybody that has that knowledge that can uplift and sustain humanity, and empower humanity. And it tells people you don't have to go through a priest to reach God. They're going to try to eliminate you.
Yeah, which begs the interesting question, why today is it such a resurgence and becoming more talked about and more researched? It's like, I kind of wonder, what is it about the life and energies that we're living in now that shamanism is able to thrive now instead of hide?
I wonder if they feel like they've got enough people under mind control that they say, "Oh, let them go." They're not going to affect people like they could have. There's enough people under mind control. Maybe they just feel like it's a wild card that isn't going to have a lot of effect now. I don't know. It's a really good question because, everybody's talking about it. It's not even like fringe anymore. It's sort of mainstream Reiki, shaman, everything. It's a really good question. Maybe other things have taken over that fringe, and shamanic healing it's kind of been watered down too a little bit. Everybody's doing it, and maybe it doesn't have the power it had with in the past, and they've watered it down enough so that it's acceptable to the powers that be. It's a really good question, but I'm guessing because they feel like they have enough people under mind control now. That'd be my guess.
Well, then I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk about if people want to connect with you for some of your services. Can you share how they can do that, and also about your books?
Yeah, well, they can go to I have a website, Radiant Earth Mother, where they can sign up for. I have options of services of Reiki, shamanic healing, remote view, and I'm adding a few more. And that's radiantearthmother.com, just the way it sounds. If they could follow me on thank you, YouTube, which is at Jane Celia Hatch, and the same for Substack. Substack is stargateopener.com.
And these links are, I believe you gave me, and so will be in the description as well.
Okay.
But I'll put some of them up just so people can find them faster.
Yes, and on the YouTube channel, I interview, I do remote views, I talk about shamanism, I do remote view for individuals as well as like celebrities. I interview survivors of SSP. We didn't get into MKUltra, which is fine because that's a very hard subject for all of us, and we can always use a break from talking about that. But I have a book, and you can only get it through me right now. I don't have a contract with Trine Day Press, the Land of Broken Crystals. They can email me, and this is me doing a soul retrieval for my two daughters, and this is my spirit horse. It's in Maine, and I'm doing a soul retrieval, and that was my power animal. And there's Eagle and the Pleiades. So those are my powers, and the crystals and the pine. And that can just be ordered through me at this point. And I'm writing a new one, Royal Blood, Royal Blackmail. It revolves around Princess Diana and a bloodline daughter of Queen Elizabeth, who's just stepped forward about her existence and her history with the royal family and why she was born. And she's an MKUltra monarch elite sex slave, and she's the daughter of Queen Elizabeth. And then I interrelate Diana's story, my story, her story, and a lot of other survivors of MKUltra. And that's almost done.
Wow, that'll be quite the book.
Yeah.
And I like how your cover, you have like little, like we call Easter eggs on it. Because I do that on my book covers too. Is there's symbols on there, and they all have a meaning.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we definitely. Oh, thank you, Julia. Love you. We definitely got into shamanism, and that was good because that's very positive and healing. And we're hearing tons about MKUltra, which is really important. But honestly, this was kind of a relief to talk about the healing aspects. And we didn't get into altars and the work I'm doing on MKUltra. But again, like it's kind of a relief. It was relaxing. Because shamanism, for me is really about healing. And it's how I survived. Shamans put me back together again in the 1990s.
Well, and I like to look at it right now as we're flooding the airwaves, with everybody's story after story after story. And I don't mean to discount people's stories, but you can only listen to so much. And so I always find it really interesting when I come across people who are survivors of it. And instead of going and saying, oh, they did this to me, and they just seem to get stuck in the story and only focus on the one part, that I love when I get a hold of people who are like survivors and they're turning around and doing something to help mankind. Because it's like we totally could have been broken. Nobody would fault us, but we instead rose up and said, you did this, but we're not going to let you define us. We're not going to let you beat us. We're going to stick to our soul mission, and did it. And someone left you a message here.
Oh, it's my daughter, Jenna. Oh, thank you, honey. She's right now. She's in the other room. Thank you. She's on the cover when she was little. Like she's the little one in the blue.
Aw.
So when she was I've been doing soul retrievals. Yeah. So that's her. So thank you, Jenna. That's so sweet. So
Yes.
and I would love to talk to more people about healing, like getting together and brainstorming about the chemtrails.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much untapped in the world because we focus on one aspect, but we never focus on, well, what if we did this?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. Well, I know it's late where you are and it's getting late here, and I want to thank you for coming on. And I know I personally feel like everybody is different with shows. And so I get a lot of guests who are like, I'm used to this type of show and these guests, and these hosts. And I always appreciate when they give me a chance because I feel like I'm different from a lot of them. And I know there's a trust issue there, because some podcast hosts have agendas, some don't. And so I just want to say thank you for coming on and trusting me to share your story and your experiences. And I'd like to leave you with a message, if I may. And that is from my heart and the heart of my shows to you. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity. It's seen, felt, and heard. So thank you.
Thank you. You touched my heart. Thank you so much, Michael.
And hopefully we can get you back on and, talk some more about healing.
I'll give you my email too if anyone wants to just talk to me, or wants to talk more about, chemtrails and how we can get together and use our shamanic skills.
Sure. Do you want to send it in the private chat and we put it in the comments, or do you want to send it to me on Messenger? And
I'll send it to you on Messenger because I can't even see the chat here.
Okay.
I can't even see it.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank you to everyone who watched, and thank you to Jane's daughter for chiming in and watching.
She says, of course, from across the room. Okay, all right, yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, and thank you to the internet for letting us finally get the show out.
I know we must have restarted like 6 times. I'm like, oh my, but wow, this is amazing. Okay, good night, and thank you, Michael, for everything you do.
Yes, thank you. And
bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.